Had the State of the State with Governor Brad Little. On Monday, I will be discussing that with Dustin Hurst this half hour. We're also going to be talking about tax cuts and the Idaho Freedom Foundation's legislative scorecard. But let's start off with Brad Little's State of the State address. He printed, well, he did print it. He had a slideshow. It was called Leading Idaho.
Right.
I think he's calling his plan. I can't say he's leading Idaho off a cliff. I mean, that's pretty doom and gloom. I don't want to start off that way.
He's not Gavin Newsom, right? He's not that guy.
He's not Gavin Newsom.
He's not Kate Brown.
That's true. So let's talk about his spending plan with the State of the State. He's presenting some numbers that if you take a look a little bit closer, it's not what it seems.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to point out, if anybody read it, the text is on idahofreedom.org. We put the text on there so you can review the speech. Governor Little is talking out of both sides of his mouth here. What was expected of him is, hey, you're a supposedly conservative governor. You're Republican. You're supposed to be fiscally disciplined. And he bragged about that a whole bunch, if you remember correctly. Yeah. In fact, I've got that clip. Let me see if I can pull that up real quick. Okay. Let's watch this.
We did not spend our way to a surplus. A budget surplus must never become an excuse for wasteful spending.
Okay, that was super brief, but that was kind of the thrust point, which is, we've got all this money that came in, whether it's people moving to Idaho and bringing in additional income and sales tax revenue, federal dollars filtering through pockets and going into tax. Yeah, there's lots and a lot of, I think the state's running a $1.9 billion surplus right now.
Yes.
So he's correct. We did not spend our way into a surplus, but we're sure as hell going to spend our way out of it is what it looks like.
I mean, he told us we need to be fiscally responsible. I thought that meant we don't spend all of it or make some lasting reform, not, hey, I'm going to tell you how to spend it, all of it, but tell you I'm being responsible about it. That doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah, it's like saying, I've been doing this a lot lately where it's like, we all do the New Year's resolution thing. Hey, I'm going to go to the gym. And then I'm also eating like 5 boxes of Good and Plenty's before going to the gym. It's like,
well, I see it like this. I'm sure people with teenagers, at some point you give your teenager $50, tell them to go to the store and spend 30 of it. And they come back and they spent all of it, but they spend it on good things, right?
Right.
It happens. But that's with teenagers. This is the governor of Idaho. So,
right. Well, and I think a little history is important here, and a little context is really, really important. So it used to be that, Brad Little, his first couple of years, he actually presented some really conservative budgets on spending, maybe a 3% or 4% increase, which is not great, but kind of acceptable, right? You can deal with. I mean, yeah, exactly. And that was the next point. Was, oh my goodness, Butch Otter would put in, 8, 9, 10% budgets increases, and all these numbers are fun and interesting, but what do they actually mean? The average homeowner, the average taxpayer doesn't care about the actual spending increase, but what this means is, hey, we're going to keep growing spending, so you have to pay higher taxes, so you can't spend your own money year after year. We're just going to keep growing government, and eventually, someday we'll face another economic downturn, and then we'll have to raise taxes or cut the services that you were expecting, or that have been delivered, which I'm actually fine with. But that's what's happening. So your taxes are artificially high because supposedly conservative Republicans don't have the will to cut spending. So there's a lot there. So Governor Little actually promised or pledged in his budget presentation an 8.1% spending increase. That's not the number that it actually is in state. And this is state funds, by the way. And this gets a little tricky. So I would hope our viewers would stick with us through this as I try to explain this. And by the way, Friday at noon, we're doing our new live show, Fiscal Fridays with Fred. Fred Birnbaum is IFF's legislative affairs director. He knows more about the state budget than about everybody in the state, except for maybe like 3 people. He is so knowledgeable about this stuff.
Fred's
he understands
a smart guy.
He is really smart.
He's got a lot of notes on it. So
if my kids ever need help with their math homework, I'm calling Fred, right? That's who he is, right? So the number is actually 17.1%. And that, by the way, I want to be clear. Yes. So dishonest. I want to be clear. That's in the next fiscal year, which starts in July 1, 2022. And that's fiscal
So
year
it's not a year
2023.
from now. It's literally
Yeah.
6 months from now.
Yeah. So it's a huge spending increase in the next year. And the current fiscal year that we're in right now, which is fiscal year 2022,
Right.
which started July 1st, 2021. So many numbers. They are adding actually $1 billion in spending to this fiscal year. So suffice it to say, there is a lot of spending coming down the pipe, a lot of it. And
But
there's
it's a play
nothing
on
fiscally
words.
conservative
It's a
about
play
this.
on numbers with this fiscal year, 2020, 2022 and 2023. And so we're actually spending 17%, not 8.1%.
Correct. And let me explain that real quick.
Okay.
So when the governor presents his budget and gives all the budget documents, he says, here's all the spending that I want to do. I want to spend on roads. I want to spend on healthcare. I want to spend on jails. I want to do this. So those are the expenditures or the outlays. There's this other thing called, what are they called? Dedicated accounts. So these are things that they may have spending down the road, or it might be the permanent building fund. There are lots of, they're called, dedicated accounts and transfers. That's all it is. And basically it's not marked as spending, even though the funds will eventually be spent. It's a weird budget trick that is used to hide a ton of spending. Now, but again, to his credit, Brad Little didn't used to do this.
But Bushwater did used to do this, the way Fred explained this to me.
This was a mainstay of the Otter administration because he wanted to fake like he was a fiscal conservative, and he's absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
So these expenditures or these transfers actually transfer out of the spending category, like something like $377 million. And Fred will, if I'm wrong on that exact figure, Fred will correct me on Friday. But it's a ton of spending, just so much spending. Mm-hmm. And I think the governor's thought is that we have some deferred maintenance we need to take care of, some debt we need to take care of, et cetera, et cetera. But we're also adding 400 new state employees. I mean, the Department of Health and Welfare is asking for 21 new social workers.
Right.
The ISP wants a plane and a pilot, or 2 pilots and 2 mechanics. It's just,
so we're adding a lot to state infrastructure and state employees.
Yeah. The other thing that we're doing is we're adding a ton to public schools. We're going to tens of millions of dollars to public schools. Now we need to dig into that and understand it a little bit more before we comment in depth. But basically the idea is, obviously cost of living is up in Idaho because of housing costs and inflation and stuff like that. But we're going to dump a whole bunch of money in the government school system. And my guess is it's not going to move test scores one single inch.
It hasn't so far. It has not.
It's weird. I actually have another clip. Let's see if we can pull this up, because I thought it was ironic. The governor touched on this a little bit when he started to talk about education and the play on how you can kind of run education like a business. Let's go to this one real quick.
If you're running a business, you can only attract and retain dedicated quality workers by paying them competitively, offering good benefits, and making them feel valued. Our educator workforce is no different. And my budget invests in these partners, our teachers, which ultimately serves Idaho families.
Okay.
So
let's go into that.
It's warm and fuzzy for a minute, but what does he actually mean?
So what he's saying, and he makes a good point. You've seen a lot of employers having to raise their wages. I mean, here in Boise, it's not the same everywhere, but here in Boise, you can make $15 an hour to start, flipping burgers at McDonald's or Sonic or whatever. Like that's a thing. So wages have to go up to adjust to market conditions. But as we're talking about this in the education debate, you also want some outcome, right? You want some improvement in the outcome. And that's the thing that the teachers union always says, and moderate Republicans always say, and Democrats always say is, hey, Idaho is 51st in per student spending. We cannot be in last place. Okay, but if you're going to run your government, your education system like a business, you want to see better outcomes. Again, going back to this, if you look at their most recent NAEP scores, NAEP is billed as the nation's scorecard, and it's an imperfect measure, but it's kind of the best one we have at this point. If you look at NAEP scores for Idaho students, dude, they're not improving. They're not improving. In fact, they're falling in some ways. All the while, we keep investing in teacher pay, and we keep adding more money for bureaucracy, just buildings, all this stuff.
Right.
We're spending the lights out, and test scores aren't moving.
And
So
test
what's
scores
the
are
answer?
not moving. And there's other factors there as far as Common Core and things like that. But overall, if we're talking numbers right now and looking at budgets, putting more money into this isn't helping at all.
Sorry, I had to cough there.
Oh.
You're exactly right. And the interesting thing is, again, the governor's going to put a whole bunch of money in the government education system. And then I'm not kidding you. A couple hours after he announced what he billed as a historic investment, and that's always the word they use, investment. It's not an expense, it's an investment. Right. Use the correct political speak. The Democrats, I'm not joking you. They said, okay, it's not good enough. Not good enough. They said that
I'm not surprised.
Yeah,
right? I'm not. They're never happy.
But you think, I mean, okay, I think it's something like more than $100 million. Even it could be more than that. Plus, we're going to be giving out, $50 million in strong students, strong family grants again. There's a ton of money being shoveled into education, and you're not going to see the results. And again, there's no return on investment other than.
But I like
angry Democrats.
Results. Democrats don't talk about results. They just want more and more money. They don't look at what the results have been in the past compared to more money that you're putting in. They just bring up, well, doesn't matter, we'll just throw more money at it. They never look at results. So it's a very astute point.
You're exactly right. And the other thing is, a lot of people would say, oh, well, the Idaho Freedom Foundation and conservative, you extreme conservative lawmakers or your allies or whatever, they want to end government education. They want to cut teacher pay, and they want to do this and do that.
Yes. That was the media last year. That's going to be the media again this year. The Democrats and the media. It's the same talking points. Anti-education.
You're exactly right.
Somehow legislators aren't going to get a budget passed and no one goes to school. Things like this.
Yeah, the sky is falling always. But the truth of the matter is, for those who are astute and paying attention, is if you stop funding government schools as we fund them now, which is it's an arcane, complex, quite frankly, a bizarre way of funding schools that I don't understand. I don't have that PhD that I probably need to understand it. But it's not easy to understand the funding formula for schools. If we stopped funding schools that way, the market could work and allow parents to pay teachers directly or form pods or hire their own teachers, and teachers could actually make more. Now think about this. So let's say we could do an ESA where, meaning the state would give every student about, I don't know, like $8,000 to and the dollars would follow them wherever. So say 8 or 12 families band together and they hire a teacher for their third grade kids to just do school. You're our teacher, come do school, do wherever you want. We'll share our houses. We'll meet in a church. We'll rent an office downtown or whatever. Yeah. You have $120,000 to do that.
And
you could have teachers making $100,000 a year.
I wanted to do an idea similar to that for my own kids about 10 years ago, but there weren't enough groups. There weren't enough people speaking out and saying the money should follow the student. But it's possible now. And when we have the pandemic of 2020 and parents staying home having to be the ones to teach their kids, they thought, wait a second, I can do this. This isn't so hard. We can manage this, right? That's why homeschooling's gone up exponentially. And it's time to have that conversation about the money following the student. And Brad Little says, he said on Friday, that parents are in the driver's seat in Idaho as far as their kids' education. No, they're not.
Nobody believes that, Governor. Nobody believes that.
Two people.
The system is in the driver's seat. That's it. Yeah. We keep funneling money into a broken system.
Right. And the public school system, like you're saying, it's the way it's funded. It's kind of an archaic formula. We've got to start thinking outside the box with funding our kids' education. Public schools, they're just not a one-size-fits-all option. They're not. They're not.
And a lot of them aren't very good, and a lot of parents can't afford for their kids to leave them. There is school choice in Idaho in that wealthy parents can and do take their kids out of public schools and send them to private schools.
Right.
But as far as middle class kids, we homeschool and we make a sacrifice to do that. My wife doesn't work because we believe that the public school system is broken and our charter school wasn't working. There are certain costs to that, but not everybody can do that, especially in a low wage state like Idaho. If money were able to follow the kids, you would see, oh my goodness, you would see families
that would be
leave.
The limit, really.
Oh
All
man,
kinds of ideas could be
you would
implemented.
see innovation like you wouldn't believe. Now, would there be some people that would abuse the system? Absolutely. That's you're going to have that. You have that now, by the way. There's lots of abuse in public schools with funding and stuff like that, and we can get more into that later. But you would see ideas, the learning pods idea, micro schools, unschooling, every idea would be on the table. And letting families work and do their thing is probably the best solution. But apparently the governor isn't ready to go there yet.
Probably not. And there's some root causes behind that. One could be teachers' unions. What else do you think? Why else would he be not ready to go there yet?
So first of all, the teachers' union helped him win the Republican primary. So take from that what you will. But also, it's just there are a lot of moderate Republicans who are so afraid of change and that thinking outside the box that students deserve. They are so unwilling to buck the special interest groups, the teachers' unions, and quite frankly, some of the populace. A lot of people just think that because their local teacher is good, the whole system is good. Well, that's not true at all. The system is expensive. It's not helping as many kids as it could. And it's unfortunate. So I think just people, the silver lining of the pandemic, which is what you mentioned and alluded to earlier, is that a lot of people's eyes were open that, hey, I can homeschool, or, hey, my kid's school isn't actually all that good.
Or I could actually teach this better myself if I could teach the curriculum this way, sort of thing.
Yeah. Or just find my own curriculum. My kid does tech prep or teaching textbooks math. We could use Khan Academy. During the daytime, we send him to archery lessons and gymnastics. And I don't know that he would. I know that he wouldn't have gotten that in his charter school. So we're doing education our way because we left our charter school, and a lot of parents are reporting really good success with that. We're doing some videos on that
precisely to him and his needs. Now, you said there's a lot of moderate Republicans in the legislature that don't want to think outside the box. They're not ready for this. It's a real shame because after the Virginia elections in November, a lot of commentary was the Republican Party is the party of parents. It's the party of school choice. So moderate Republicans had better get on board or they're going to be left behind with this. They're going to have to change at some point, I think, or suffer the consequences, I suppose.
I don't think, and we're going to show them this year, I don't think Republicans understand how engaged and enraged a lot of parents are.
I don't think they do either. I see it every day. I talk about it pretty much every day. They're just not getting it. Do they not turn on the news? Maybe they don't.
I don't know. And it's everywhere, by the way. I kind of live in the conservative echo chamber in that, most of my friends are conservative or whatever, but I've seen a rise in parents who say, hey, I'm not Republican. I'm not Democrat. I just want good government. And I don't trust our schools anymore. I didn't understand how bad things were. I didn't understand Common Core was bad. I didn't understand that CRT is being embraced, not necessarily taught. We talked about that last time, being embraced by our teachers, and we're focusing on wokeness and social justice, and we're turning out social justice activists. A lot of people are realizing, hey, my kid's way behind and I can get them up to speed quicker. There's this great awakening happening. I
don't think the powers that be with this pandemic, I don't think they anticipated that happening. So it's kind of funny that so many parents are awakening to this as a side effect. And as a result, I think the Republican Party, or at least conservative Republicans, are doing well with something that's been there all the time they've been talking about, which is the money follows the student, give parents more choice. And now it's here, and they're the party of parents and of school choice. So definitely time for other Republicans to get on board. If they can't, I don't know
They
what's going to
have the
happen.
they had the opportunity to be the party of parents and school choice. Now, again, Brad Little said, "Hey, we're going to give $50 million in Empower Students grants for, homeschool, private schools, school
Right.
choice like stuff, but there are limits on that." And that's one-time money funded by ARA. That's one of the stimulus packages, one of the 45 we've gotten or whatever.
Exactly.
And by the way, just to disclose, I took the last one because we were homeschooling, and I'm like, hey, let's buy some laptops for the kids so we can,
Right.
we can, have them at school. We bought lots of educational equipment, whatever.
Mhm.
Great, cool design, but $50 million goes quickly. And that's what they found last time. A lot of people wanted that money so that they could, bring their kids home and do that stuff. Again, it comes back to his point. Parents are not in the driver's seat in Idaho. Throwing them a bone of $50 million for these grants is nice.
Yeah.
But
it's going to
it's
run
not,
out. And then
yes, and it's not
they
long
have to
lasting.
fund it again.
Then we still have this multi-billion-dollar school budget, the system that needs to be fed, and these teachers are demanding more and more, and parents are going to be left out in the cold after the crisis is over. And again, this is just another example of Governor Little trying to have it both ways.
Yeah, trying to please everybody. You can't do that.
Yep.
So it seems like education's an issue with his state of the state, how he's spending. And then we're talking a little bit about kind of shuffling funds around like Butch Arter did. Is Brad, now you said to his credit, Brad Little wasn't shuffling things around at first. He stopped that. Is it happening again?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
he's using this budget to hide, like I said, $377 million in spending, which it is spending. It will be spent, just not now. And they just want to hide the ball. So he's not called on his outrageous spending, but we will call him on it because it's true. And the question is, I think we all can agree that the Senate will go along with whatever the governor wants and give him his money. We'll see. JFAC members will have a lot to decide over the next couple of weeks. Will House members feel comfortable defending a 17% increase in the upcoming Republican primary? I don't know. I don't know if voters are well versed in the issue, but I mean, voters still want fiscal conservatives, I think.
Of course they do. And it's an election year. I think when you factor that into this legislative session, there might be a good chance of getting some of these moderate Republicans to vote a little bit more conservative. As far as budgets go, I can't say. I know there are conservative legislators committed to spending responsibly. They've got the grocery tax on the agenda. But what we have with Brad Little, we've got, let's see, we have Representative Harris today coming out with a bill that he's sponsored. And he's talking about reducing income tax.
Yes.
But there's still no talk about repealing grocery tax or being more aggressive with income tax. Yes. But you had a lot to say about what's going on with this bill. And you certainly, and the main point of the bill is it would reduce individual and corporate income tax rates from 6.5% to 6%.
So I want to be clear here. I want to be crystal clear. Any tax cut is a good tax cut. IFF will never, ever, ever oppose a tax cut ever because people should have control of their own money. They can spend their money better than any politician, better than any bureaucracy. And I think, I don't typically love the whole taxation is theft thing because I don't think people are ready for it just yet. I think they're getting there, by the way. But taxation ultimately is a form of theft. That's not radical to say anymore, but the general public isn't there yet. Anyway,
people are actually talking about it when Facebook doesn't edit that. Anyway, it's being talked about, sure. But like you said, IFF's never going to turn down or criticize an effort to cut taxes, but really it's not enough. There's more that can be done here, but let's talk about how much more.
So a couple weeks ago, we wrote a column about. Thanks, Wayne. The boss chimed in. Taxation is theft. He's literally upstairs, by the way.
He wants to make sure you get that right.
Yeah. Okay. The memo has been received, boss. So the
he
point
wrote an article in November And
Yeah.
it was 4 solid ideas to, I didn't write the title down. Now he's going to text us from the man upstairs is going to text us again. Anyway, Wayne had several ideas on how to use this state surplus. One of those is to get rid of what he says is the state's progressive income tax. The state collects $2.2 billion from individual and corporate income taxes.
Yep.
He says bringing the income tax to or near zero is well within reach.
Absolutely. But will conservatives and fake Republicans do it? Obviously, right now the answer is no. Again, every tax cut is a good tax cut. This one is so unambitious and boring that Republicans should honestly be ashamed of it. If we weren't overspending on every single project, if we weren't buying a new plane for ISP, if we weren't plunging a bunch of money into a broken government school system, we could give so much more back to taxpayers. We could repeal the grocery tax. We could maybe lower the income tax to like I said, near zero, lower the sales tax. There are a myriad of options. But the other problem with this approach is that, and Wayne has we keep talking about Wayne, he's just in our heads all the time. But we have remarked constantly about how the legislature is no longer an arena of ideas, and that's playing out right here. So what you're seeing is this tax plan has been worked out by legislative leadership and the governor's office beforehand. It's been blessed.
Monk
it's the
said
holy
to the
tax plan.
Associated Press 3 or 4 weeks ago, they were talking about, hey, we might be able to do this tax plan. It's identical to this. They were talking about this beforehand.
Yes.
So
yeah, they've been working on it for a long time. This one has the blessing of leadership, and my guess is that no other tax plan will be heard. And they're doing it early in the session as a strategic matter, right? Because the people who want, what have you seen in previous sessions? You've seen Ron Nate and Priscilla Giddings, 2 principled diehard conservatives who just stick to their guns. You love them to death. And every session they bring up, hey guys, grocery tax. Brad Little ran on grocery tax repeal. You guys have said this for years. Let's
get it done, right?
And now they're trying to take that wind out of their sails so that Ron Nate can't say, hey guys, remember this pledge about the grocery tax? We'll get they're going to have this done in a couple days. And then for the rest of the session, the press will be like, well, we already did it. We gave plenty of tax relief. Now shut up. That's exactly what they're doing, because they want Ron Nate to shut up before a primary. Take that to the bank. They honestly, they don't. I'll tell you this. I can't tell you who, but there was a member of leadership who was talking to somebody who is close to me. And those who know me probably know who it is. And this person said, hey, we want to do something ambitious on tax relief this year. We've got lots of money in the bank. What should we do? And this person said, dude, just freaking do the freaking grocery tax repeal. And this person said, yeah, we'd like to do that, but we can't give Ron Nate and the Liberty legislators a win. That's exactly what it is. So because
it's about being petty.
Because there's personal animosity between the leadership.
Forget the citizens of Idaho. Let's just be petty. These are people that need to be voted out of office.
So because of that, they're holding the rest of us hostage, making us wait. Right. My family, we buy lots and lots of groceries. We actually spend, because we have a special food thing in our family. We spend like $800 or $900 on groceries every single month.
You pay a lot of grocery tax.
A ton, and it's not because I'm fat. Probably, I think maybe it is. I don't know. Anyway,
now it comes to the part of the show where Dustin insults himself. But moving on,
it happens constantly. So our tax rebate doesn't cover it. It just doesn't. And there are some families where that is the case, where it does cover it or whatever. But I don't want to wait. And Grant Burgoyne made this point. He's a Democrat from Garden City. He made this point beautifully a couple years ago. Families don't need tax relief at income tax rebate time or return time. They need it at the register when they're paying. It doesn't help them as
this is
much
a Democrat
as
saying this. Progressives are on board with this too. I've spoken to several that think it's absolutely outrageous that people should be taxed to feed their families. I think it's wrong.
Again, and we bring this up, and I know that they get their pound of flesh elsewhere, but even freaking California has figured this out, that taxing groceries is wrong. that our system is screwy. And we do it because we want to get money from out-of-state tourists and import that money into Idaho.
And that
It's
could
the
be
lamest
disproved
excuse.
about 100 different ways. That's just the silliest thing I ever heard.
It is.
Oh,
And-
yeah,
and-
let's bilk those tourists for all they got. I mean, I know we have a lot of tourists, but for crying out loud, just it's not a ton of money. And also people go to other states, like up in North Idaho. People drive over into Washington State to buy groceries. So how do they
and it hurts the border communities. If you look up and down the western border of Idaho, you see there's Moscow, Pullman, Lewiston, Clarkston, Fruitland, Ontario, all those border towns. You see Walmarts are in and Costco's are on the other side of the border. So our people are leaving Idaho, taking their tax revenue with them and going to those states because they can save money on groceries there.
You don't want to hear the logical argument. What you hear from a lot of legislators is, well, let's tax those tourists. I mean, that doesn't make sense to me. So
let's put a tourist tax
There's
on.
only 14 states that still charge some form of grocery tax, and some of it's nil, like 0.1%, right? Idaho, out of these 14 states, we're in the top 3 spot for the amount of money that we charge for groceries. I think Kansas is ahead of us, Missouri, whatever. Those don't count. We're talking about Idaho. We're top 3 in the nation for paying grocery tax. That's ridiculous. This is supposed to be a Republican state. Why are we still paying on grocery tax?
You want to be pro-family. You want to be pro-business. Get rid of the grocery tax. Get rid of it. Be done with it. And quite frankly, I mean, just from a personal standpoint, I'm so tired of fighting this fight. We're going to win eventually. But I have plenty of gray hair in my beard.
People have to contact their representatives. People have to know, hey, there aren't grocery taxes in other states. People just kind of don't think about that. So the more you think about it, the more it makes sense to get rid of the grocery tax. But like you said, they will probably go with this Harris tax cut and say, you whiners, we gave you a tax cut.
Yep, that's exactly.
Half a percent. Come on.
It's a good thing. Absolutely. It's a very good thing. But it could be so much better. I mean, the LDS folks will understand the story of good, better, best. This is good. This is good. We could have best if only Steve Harris and Brad Little and Scott Bedke were willing to, give the Liberty legislators a win. Quite frankly, that's all it comes down to.
Right.
It could be so much better. But
it's just
here we are.
Being petty. End of story, right?
Yeah,
it's not about the voters. It's about being petty. And they have to pass some form of tax relief because there's so many seats up for grabs when we have the primaries. These legislators can go out and say, well, I voted for a tax break. Look what I did for you. So you got to have some kind of election talking point. And that's what this is all about. There's a reason Scott Bedke said he'd like to see tax reform or tax repeals or tax relief discussed early in the session. There's a reason for that. And this is what it is. So,
you're exactly right.
Briefly wanted to bring up, I don't know if this is a direct slam on legislators like Priscilla Giddings and Ron Nate that are for the grocery tax. But Harris said that since local governments, not the state government, collect property taxes, he says it's harder and less fair for the legislature to modify property taxes. What do you think about that, Dustin?
Okay, they passed a property tax reform bill in like 5 seconds on the last day of the session, or second to the last day, whatever it was last year. That's a cop-out.
Representative Harris doesn't think it's fair. So
it's a cop-out. Whenever they give that excuse, it means I don't want to do it or I don't have the courage to do it.
Right.
So I'm not going to do it, whatever it is. I mean, we've seen that. We've seen that time and time again. So
property tax would be nice too. It would be nice to have some of that and a lasting change, certainly.
Well, yeah, but I will say this one comes down to, we can also blame the voters for part of this.
Okay.
Because that a lot of this comes down to spending. A lot of it comes down to local government spending.
Sure does.
If more Idahoans attended there, and I understand people have busy lives. They don't want to go down to the mosquito district or the fire district board meetings, and it's nearly impossible to fight these things. But if somehow we could get organized and show up at these district meetings and say, hey, stop spending all my money. I don't want to pay $25,000 for this stupid piece of art, or $1 million for this feather on I think Coeur d'Alene paid like $150,000 for a feather on some road like 20 years ago or whatever. It was
I'm
the
not
dumbest thing.
surprised. Well, a lot of cities are, and people do need to get organized. They need to write or email. A lot of the problem is in the city of Idaho Falls, Bonneville County, there's not public comment taken anymore at Idaho Falls City Council meetings. And
Really?
so,
Are you serious?
yes, sir.
I did not know
I'm
that.
completely serious about that. And once something's on the agenda, you can't email about it. And so the whole thing's just very hush, hush. Yeah. I'll send you that information.
Yeah, let's talk about that offline.
My people. But long story short, there's no.
Wait, I think our people are now the same people. So anyway.
I know. So it means I'll call you when this is over.
There we go.
But yeah, we do have issues. And I get that a lot of the responsibility lies with the voters, but sometimes their hands are tied. And when their hands are tied like this, maybe
you got to appeal to your state lawmakers, and then they'll give you a lame excuse.
Yeah.
It's so
millions of dollars on signs pointing to where the hospital is. But I won't get into that now. That's just totally another show. Another show.
No kidding.
But as far as the amount of money there is, some of Wayne's talking points, we could get rid of the state's progressive income tax, property taxes, the grocery tax, federal control of public schools. I actually thought this was a genius idea. And people say, well, what's wrong with the federal government giving us money? Well, strings are always attached.
Always.
The way it was explained to me is there's $300 million.
I want to say it's about 275.
No, well, not
somewhere,
even 300
somewhere
million.
Between 250. Yeah, you could easily do it this year. You can do it.
See, this is where we're at as a country. We say only $275 million. Well, that's pocket change, right? In the days of Bidenflation, $275 million to get the feds off our backs. And we have $1.9 billion. I say get the feds out of public schools. Lots of other states are doing it. Everyone's doing it. National School Board Association. Pennsylvania, several other states told them to kick rocks, right? It's very popular to get the federal government out of your state's public schools right now. So.
Yep. But again, that would take a bold vision and a spine of steel, because the leftists and the moderate Republicans would just lose their minds. The special interest groups would go crazy. And we just don't have the leadership in our capital to do that right now. And that's unfortunate.
So a lot of this is up to the voters voting.
Everything's up to the voters, quite frankly.
Yeah, everything's up to the voters.
Do better, voters.
Do better. Well, you feel like telling the voters, it's like, I'm sorry all these things happen. The beatings will continue until morale improves. That's how it feels right now. But you just have to be careful who you vote for to represent you in Boise and get somebody with a spine. The end. Not really. It's more subtle than just the end, but that's the bottom line. Well,
that's why and this is a nice segue into our final topic tonight. That's why we do at the Idaho Freedom Foundation, we do the Idaho Freedom Index. A couple of years ago, we said, hey, we have this supposedly conservative legislature that's 80% Republican, but they're not actually doing conservative things. And so we launched the Idaho Freedom Index in 2013, I believe. And we rate pieces of legislation to say whether they grow or shrink government, whether they, take money out of your wallet, increase fees, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot there. This is IdahoFreedomIndex.com to get there and to see and to understand what our thinking on this. But we rate hundreds of bills each session on those metrics. And we say, hey, lawmakers, you get a score based on how you vote on all of these bills. And generally how that works is the conservatives, those who are naturally conservative, rise to the top. Those who are liberal fall to the bottom like clockwork. And it's not because we're picking on certain people. That's how it works. They self-sort.
It's just if someone's inclined to vote more conservative naturally, it's going to look good with the Freedom Index score.
And now I will say the one criticism, and this is where I'm going to bring you in here.
Okay.
The one criticism of the index is, hey, it's just radical extremist. By the way, you're going to hear that word a lot this year. Extremist. There was some polling.
Excited.
I was told that there was some polling done
I'm
by
an extremist driving around in my minivan, dropping kids off at school.
Yeah, asking for tax cuts and grocery tax repeal. Ooh, you're so extreme.
Excuse me, this is the Crown. Could I have my $800 back? Thank you.
But I was told there was some polling done that apparently we're all extremists or whatever. And yeah, that's great. And I don't even remember where I was going because I'm so flustered by the
extremists. Here's the thing. And I always say this. Do you read the Republican platform? Is that really
I try not to. I'm just kidding.
Okay. Well, so people get called extremists. We hear that a lot this year. We heard it a lot last year. But you told me the history of the Idaho Freedom Foundation's Freedom Index score. And if you compare that to something like the American Conservative Union score, it looks a lot alike. American Conservative Union, they've been around for a long time. And they're kind of the gold standard for rating legislators. Now, here's the thing. There's plenty of lobbyist groups all across the country and all across the state of Idaho that also score legislators. It just seems the Idaho Freedom Foundation gets an awful lot of attention about it. Why is that? Is it because non-extremists are upset that they didn't think of the idea in the first place? What is it?
So they get upset because we actually tell the truth. So many lawmakers, typically, again, those fake conservatives say, they go to the voters at campaign time and they say, hey, I vote because I love babies, so I'm pro-life, I like guns, and I like killing wolves.
And
like literally that was
that 0.5% tax cut.
Yeah, I'm fiscally conservative. So those 4 things could win you an election before the Idaho Freedom goodness gracious, it's been a long day. Before the Idaho Freedom Index came to fruition. Now it's a little bit harder. You actually have to vote like a conservative on every single vote. And they don't love that at all. That's it. No. That's why they're upset. And everybody has their own image of themselves. So they see themselves as a great Ronald Reagan-esque conservative or Trump conservative or whatever now it is. But we bust that narrative and they don't like
There's a lot of self-identifying Republicans, and this just kind of blows all that out of the water. You really have to take a look at yourself and say, well, what are my principles? What are my priorities, right? If this is conservative, the American Conservative Union is standard as well. You don't even have to look at if you're a legislator, you don't even have to look at the Freedom Foundation's index score yet, okay? Go take a look at the American Conservative Union.
Yep.
And then you go take a look at the Freedom Index.
Yep.
Ask yourself who you are.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people have, and I don't want to make this about IFF because it's not. It's about the good of the people and the voters. But a lot of people have criticized IFF as being this radical libertarian institution. When again, our scorecard again aligns pretty well with the Republican platform. So these people have a platform that they say they adhere to, and then they don't. And we, say, hey, here's our conservative or our take on the conservative platform. You're kind of missing it here, and here.
Yeah.
And they don't like that. But again, we align nicely with the ACU scorecard, and nobody's going to call the ACU libertarian. It's just not going to happen because they are, again, like you said, the gold standard of conservative politics. And so it's nice to defend IFF, but also show that we aren't an outlier. Again, I was raised in, I believe you are too. I was raised in LDS culture, and I was taught this way. The Book of Mormon the Bible is over here. And a lot of people, evangelicals, are going to hate me for using this one, but this is my understanding of the world. The Book of Mormon is here. The Bible is here. They do not replace the Bible with the Book of Mormon. In fact, they're supposed to build a bridge so that they stick together. They work together. That's the best metaphor I can think of for this one. And that's exactly how it happens. The people who score well on the ACU scorecard generally do well on our Freedom Index and vice versa. Not because they're obedience political scorecards, which is what Greg Graff thinks they are, but because we actually show who is principled and who keeps their word and who doesn't. It's that simple.
You don't let people just make campaign promises and then say, oh, I'm going to vote however I want. See you later. You actually hold them accountable to those conservative talking points. Now, I think the reason, and this is a fascinating topic for me. I think one of the reasons that the Idaho Freedom Foundation, it's almost like leftists and rhinos like to alienate the IFF Freedom Index as this outlier kind of thing. All right. I've said this about the media in Idaho. They always treat Idaho like they want us to think we're just a whole bunch of crazy people with crazy ideas. And that's why I always look for things happening in other states. I say, hey, people don't like the National School Board Association. In Pennsylvania, they told them to kick rocks. Ohio told them to get out of here too. All these things. So I'm like, we are not the crazy island of misfit toys here in Idaho. We're not. Okay. Right. Other states are this way. So I think that's just one of the reasons. They just try to alienate point fingers, say, oh, you're crazy, you're an extremist, right? Because you believe in that. So it's just the narrative that's been pushed, and it's really a throwaway narrative, and people don't take more of an in-depth look. We really live in, what did Rush Limbaugh call it? The drive-by media. And I think drive-by because it's a brief headline and misrepresents things, and people say, oh, that's terrible. And that's the impression they get. And if you repeat the headline enough in several different forms, people are going to accept it as fact. So,
yep, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. So what we're going to do on the show notes for this one and in the comments, I'm going to link to the ACU scorecard and our Idaho Freedom Index scorecard so people can review those and look at them. But the ACU scorecard just came out for 2021. And we'll get more into this Friday a little bit because I'd like to prolong the conversation. I have to go take a nap. It's almost my bedtime. Actually, it's gym time.
Bedtime, dude. All right.
Yeah. It's my kid's bedtime almost. But go take a look at those and look at which bills are rated, who's, why we think the way we do, what questions we ask about bills, what question they ask about bills. And, again, there are some differences. They aren't in perfect alignment, and that's probably okay. I think that's probably how it should be. Sure. But you're going to see some trends that are, startling. I mean, when the Senate majority leader, the Republicans, the Senate pro tem, Chuck Winder, has 44% on the Idaho Freedom Index, which is a point or two higher than
questions.
Yeah, he's got 2 points higher than a Boise Democrat, Senator Janie Ward Engelking.
Wow,
you got problems. You got problems. So
you have some explaining to do.
You really do. And the cool thing is, for those who haven't seen it yet, and we haven't announced it yet, I just kind of did a soft launch. We actually revamped the Idaho Freedom Index this year. Last year we just had all the scorecards and the lawmaker records and stuff like this. It's way more comprehensive this year. So you can go in and you can actually look at your lawmaker's record for as long as they've been in office, or as long as the Freedom Index has been around. Yeah. Well, I wouldn't call it an archive. We have everything archived, but you can see the trend lines.
There. Okay.
Yeah. And it's interesting. Like Greg Cheney, you'll see there's one here and then it goes up and then it's just been slowly declining ever since.
Up like that during election years?
I haven't done the look at that, but my guess is yes. But it also depends on, the legislation presented and the overall scores of bills. Long story, it's fun to track. You can also compare your district lawmakers and how they voted on individual pieces of legislation. So that should lead to a lot of fun too. So we're going to do more explaining. We might do a show just on that because it's so fun to go and play with it. So
I think that would be fun. Right. And then go look at lawmakers at the American Conservative Union score and kind of makes things a little bit more clear. So yeah, I think we should do a whole show on this, but
so
looks like, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, so we have the legislative session starting this week. We got the first bill out of committee. And do you think that one's going to pass?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. I'm almost 100% sure it'll pass because of what we said earlier, which is they're doing it to take the wind out of the grocery tax repeal sales. That's all they're doing. Again,
they could try it. It doesn't mean I won't stop talking about the grocery tax.
Oh, we're going to talk about it all the time. Did you just do the head thing? I can't even do it.
I grew up in North Carolina and Pittsburgh, right? You can take the girl out of Pittsburgh. You can't take the Pittsburgh out of the girl. You'll find me do that. I'll talk about it.
Amazing. So before we close tonight, just a couple announcements. So remember, Steph Lucas Live is
Wednesdays and Fridays.
Wednesdays and Fridays, 7 p.m. every night, and we'll go for usually 30 minutes a night, and we'll take questions. Come and maybe next week we'll do drinks. I'll get a rock star or something. We'll do drinks and we'll just talk.
I'll bring 5-hour energy. It'll be fun.
Yeah, it'll be great. We always are open to questions, stuff like that. Love answering questions if we can, as far as we can. It's complicated. But also Friday at noon, we're going to do Fiscal Fridays with Fred. Now, again, Fred Birnbaum is our Legislative Affairs Director, and he does this great explanation every week. He does an explanation of the budget, what's going on, how spending is really happening, because you can't trust the press on this. We're going to be writing about this later this week or next week. You can't trust the press because you've got these kids coming out of J school. They have no idea how to read a state budget, and they think they know, but they have no clue. And you can see that with the coverage. Anyway, Fiscal Fridays with Fred is noon on Friday, and then 7 p.m. we'll be doing Steph Lucas live, and then we've got a big announcement for you guys next week. I can't get into the details, but I think we're gonna add another show to our lineup. So stay tuned. We've got some good stuff coming for you. And if there's something you want us to talk about, shoot us an email, media@idahofreedom.org. We're more than happy to plan a show because we want the show to serve you and equip you with the knowledge you need to hold government accountable. That's why we're doing this.
And to elect some representatives with a backbone, which is what we discussed, and that's coming up.
I can't say that. That's not my purpose as a 501c3.
I know we're 503. Sorry, I got all talk show host on you for a second.
Yeah, you did. My job is to educate people just so that they can bring about good policies.
Right.
And
which is why the Fiscal Fridays with Fred is great, because if you want to be able to converse with your representatives about money issues, Fred's your guy. If he can make me understand this stuff, we're good.
Yep, absolutely. So I think that's about it tonight.
I think that's it. We're signing off. I just have so much fun. One of these nights we're going to be talking for an hour and we're not even going to know. But that'll be another time as we get deeper into this legislative session. Thanks so much for joining on Steph Lucas Live, whoever's been watching this. Dustin, thanks for being here and explaining this, especially about the finances. And I will be back on Friday at 7.
Thanks, Stephanie.